So, welcome to March Thursday Nighter. We're very lucky to have actually a local master, Oke, on to commentate tonight. So, we're getting some local high rated players. So, very lucky for that. Welcome. And gonna make a couple announcements quick. So, we did get a Discord started for the club. So, what Discord is it's just a kind of voice chat and text messaging server where you can meet up with people, and you can find the link in the description for our Discord. So what we're mainly going to use it for is to solve puzzles as a group or analyze games. So you can share your screen with each other and solve some puzzles or analyze your games. And we're going to kind of do puzzles, especially at 8 p.m. on Tuesdays. So we don't have a Tuesday events at the castle anymore, but we're still going to meet up from home, solve some puzzles 8 p.m. on Tuesdays. So if you want to get in on that study group, check out the Discord. Connor, who's playing two boards tonight, is in that study group as well as Eddie, and hopefully we'll get several more players. We got Mitch in there as well. One more announcement is, I'm starting to come play casual nights on Wednesdays. So Wednesdays is casual night at the castle. So you can come hang out from starts at 5 and you just play casual games, and then there's a blitz tournament that starts. Unrated blitz tournament starts at about 7. So I'm usually hanging out from about 5 to 8. I'm not much of a blitz player, so I don't stay for the whole blitz tournament. But if anyone wants to come meet me, hang out at the club on the casual night, come on out Wednesday sometime between 5 and 8. And with that, we will get into this week's games. So very strong tournament this month. We have all the regular strong players, as well as new entrant, National Master Ethan. So, and gonna get right into the games.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Well, on
I
camera
guess maybe
here,
we'll start with.
yeah, we had Dane against Robert, but their game's already done. So that's why you see Kings in the center on the camera, and in the background we also have UV versus Connor. So those are the camera boards, 1 and 2. So yeah, we could start with either one of those. We could maybe recap. I guess Dane versus Connor's done right here on board 2. So let's maybe just go through that whole game since it's already finished.
Okay. So I'll go to the beginning. And so the game started with e4. And no surprise recently, anyway, that Dane falls with e5. He was experimenting with Sicilian and French, but I think he's accepted that e5 is his true home after e4.
Oh, Vienna.
And then we got a Vienna opening, and
So just knight f3 here. It's a
Robert.
bit strange to me. I feel like
Yeah, I
usually they
usually
want to go f4 with the Vienna type plans, right?
yes. That in this position after Bishop c5, um, normally in the Vienna IC, folks uh, try to set up an f4, an early f4, but it would seem that maybe with the bishop on c5, that's no longer as favorable, unless the king is going to move over to the queen side, because then you have to engineer the exchange of the bishops, it would seem. Um, I'm not an expert in this position by any means, but I do think knight f3 is actually the most common move here, strangely enough. So even though it doesn't seem like it's in keeping with the normal Vienna idea, knight f3 is actually the most common move here.
Yeah, and if Dane, it's nice to see, if Dane's invested in Petrov as his main, he probably actually doesn't really mind to see some of these e5 sidelines because he's investing in his future, right? He needs to know how to handle all these anyways. So versus,
Yes.
if someone plays a sideline against your con or your Fort Knox French, you're like, oh man, I was supposed to surprise you, and now you're surprising me. What am I going to get out of this? Because that's not your main. But that's the nice part about repeating over and over is, especially if someone plays a sideline into you, it feels useful. Like I'm building some knowledge that I'm going to be able to use for a long time in case somebody else does this against me. But
Rather than just a one-off that you'll
yeah,
forget and your opponent might forget as well. So, so yeah, so it's no, I think this all seems normal. D4 is the most common move here by far. Um, and I should mention that playing the white pieces in this position, there was a sighting of Mikhail Tal. So obviously, Robert isn't. Well, it would seem obvious that Robert isn't simply just moving pieces around. He probably has some experience in this position himself.
well, this is conventional for Robert, honestly, because last week Robert didn't touch his B2 pawn or his D2 pawn for about 15 moves. Just refused to play D4
Wow.
in many positions that called for it. So Robert a lot of times likes to invent his own brand of theory. So to me, what I'm seeing so far is this is conventional for Robert. So I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. He's taking some center, and yeah, I mean, it feels like when black plays. What do you feel about when black plays like ED4? I feel whenever I'm white, I'm feeling nice about that. I feel like it feels Philidor like. I feel like I kind of am getting a bigger share of the center, and I like seeing that pawn on D6. I know he'll want to make that D5 pawn break later, probably. So it already feels slow. What do you think?
Well, I'm not as sanguine when black plays uh, E5 takes D4, not because it's such a strong position. It's a different kind of position. And um, it does allow white to play more, but in exchange, black gets to play more. So, for example, now you're needing to at least keep in mind that um, he might target E4. And so you have to figure out how you're going to develop your pieces to make sure that remains well guarded and also keep him from playing D5. So it's a double-edged sword in a way. Um, I think one major difference between this and the Philidor is that the bishop's on C5. So
Yeah.
the bishop actually, for the moment, has more say in what's going on. And for example, if your king were to castle kingside, he would have to uh, keep an eye on what's going on with that bishop along that important diagonal. Okay,
So we do have just
he
so
had
we
to do it.
we do have Dane in the chat. So
Oh, okay.
we're gonna be getting the player himself here in our criticism.
Oh, no fun. Um, so your point about Robert playing unorthodox approaches in the opening. I remember years ago playing Robert, and uh, he played, shall I say, more normal. But then he also has would take on certain eccentricities and made for interesting games. We always had interesting fights. And then he had a bit of a hiatus for some years, and then came back a couple of years ago. And since then, it's yeah. If I see a normal position on the board by move 10, then I'm wondering, is he okay? Because he does tend to enjoy the unorthodox, and this move here, knight f5, to my understanding, is a new move.
I do have to make a
As
correction, by the
early,
way. Uh,
yes.
it's not Dane Zagar in the chat. It's Dane Matson. So uh,
Oh, okay, okay.
we've got. another, yeah, we got two Danes. They're both coaches. I think they have gotten confused for each other in the past. So I'm sure it's not the first time. But thank you very much for joining and viewing the channel. So yeah, we not only have strong players playing, we got strong viewers, strong commentators. We just got the whole package here at the castle.
So yeah, knight f5 isn't a move that would come to my mind quickly. Uh, there are more important things to be doing than allowing the knight to be exchanged off with advantage. So you had mentioned earlier, Chris, keeping black from playing d5, and by playing knight f5, if black were to capture immediately, as he does, now all of a sudden white doesn't have really effective central control, and black doesn't have to fight to get d5 in if he wants to play it. So knight f5 seems a bit off, and as I said, it's from what I can tell, it's a new move and probably one that won't be repeated too often.
Yeah, the only time I play knight f5 I can recall is against like O'Kelly. So yeah, I know you used to play a lot of a6 b5 yourself. Uh,
Yes.
so I know you know that knight f5 may be playable in one of those lines, but then I know that line I'm trying to get my knight back to e3 and just get a Sveshnikov like clamp on d5 though. But
Hmm.
yeah, not doesn't happen too often. I don't play it myself, and yeah, it's I don't like to touch a piece. I like to be very principled in my openings. I don't touch a piece twice unless I really need to. Um,
Yes.
so yep, but Robert
Yes.
definitely doing his own thing. But hey, that is a bishop pair, so at least we got some dynamics.
And so here comes d5 right away. Um, so at this point, I mean, I don't think black is winning, but um, black is definitely for choice.
Yeah, why d5 though? That's a bit confusing to me. I feel like I want to get my king castled.
Um, yes, I don't know that d5 is necessary right now. My guess is that Dane didn't want to allow the bishop to be exchanged and maybe wanted to bring his bishop back. It's a possibility. I don't know that it's necessary at this point. I guess we could move pieces around and take a look. So if black were to play 0-0, which would seem to be a more normal move, what would white be threatening here?
Yeah, I guess maybe he was worried about. The only thing that's logical to me is maybe he's worried about white playing knight d5 himself. So otherwise, what's the point of d5 in general?
Yeah, I don't.
But that doesn't look too scary to me. I don't know.
No, it doesn't.
I
And
mean, he's moving.
in fact,
He's breaking another opening principle. He's already moved. He's already played another extra knight move to f5. Now he's wasting another tempo with knight d5. I mean, I'm not scared of that. Look at that king. It's still very far away
we're being castled.
from being
Yeah, I
castled.
don't know. Yeah, I don't know that D5 was necessary here. Um, but then maybe that's the point, is that at this moment, Dane doesn't feel he needs to stick to what's necessary because he feels his position is strong enough that he can spend an extra tempo to improve his standing in the center and not give white anything.
Yeah, it's because and it's like that bishop is already developed though too.
Yeah.
It's not like he's like giving his bishop f8 some breathing room to finally get out. So I don't know. I'm not saying I don't feel like I love d5. Just feels a little bit odd to me.
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessary. It's not a bad move,
Yeah,
but
definitely not.
it's not I don't think it's needed right now. And maybe if Dane Zagar does show up in the chat, he might give us a pointer to on what his
Yeah.
thinking was here. So seven. Oh wow.
Yeah, this is all. So what did White play there? How did he get time for Queen E7, or what was White's last
So
move?
White played
Bishop
Bishop
E3. Okay,
D3.
okay,
White played Bishop D3,
logical.
uh, which was answered by Queen E7, and it'll probably be a demoralizing situation playing Queen E2, but I don't think it's wrong either. King F1 doesn't seem like it's better than Queen E2 here.
Yeah, I can see it. Robert really hates trading queens, but now what's Rook H1 gonna do? So but I mean at this point, I could still see this working. He's at this point he's just hard committed though to shoving that H pawn, because
Ah,
how else is that Rook gonna get any activity? But I don't know. It's really not how I want to play with the white pieces. Why am I giving myself king safety issues out of nowhere? Um,
just because you can.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
but
that seems the 97 is played uh fl- somewhat flexible, keeping rather than knight c6. And I'm wondering if Dane is already considering castling queenside here,
yeah,
which allows him to then just throw his pawns at white's king.
yeah. Dana's also wondering about 92 instead of the king f1 sidestep. What do you think about blocking but kind of giving yourself that pin?
Yes, this is also valid. Especially since the knight on c3 is not really getting much done, and at some point, I would imagine white wanting to reposition that knight, so moving it to e2 right away makes sense, especially if you're really wanting to avoid the endgame in that position. So 92, I see nothing wrong with that.
There's
I think that
I mean
that's
we got to look at bishop f2 for a second, but that seems really unlikely. But
yeah. Bishop f2 smells wrong. Put it that way.
yes, of course you don't have enough attackers. But I'm seeing knight g4. I'm seeing queen h4. I feel like I got to at least give it half a glance just in case. You never know. You don't want to.
I'm going to march in,
Oh,
and hopefully I don't, and hope I don't get killed. But okay,
yeah,
I
yeah.
see nothing for her.
There's a lot of defenders around that king, and only yeah. So that's a bit hope chest, but
Yes, but it's worth looking at because
92
it'll
does
reveal
seem
Dane.
92 seems a bit awkward though. It's cutting the queen out of the defense, so you never know.
It just so happens, fortunately for White, that Black doesn't have enough firepower aimed at enough firepower and advantage in time to get that done. Now, maybe um, what if we looked at a different move order? What if we looked at knight g4 immediately? I don't think it's
And
great,
he
but
wants the castle, of course. So let's see what
the
happens.
castle and then queen h4.
Hmm.
And now we got um,
Now h3 seems natural, but we have too much on
uh,
f2. Yeah, probably.
yeah,
So that
um,
is something.
yeah. So this might be a reason why 92 has some deficiencies because so 92, 94, 00 may not be the solution. Let's see.
Well, can you
unless we're
play?
missing
Wait.
something.
Well, can you play? What about castles? Queen h4, bishop f4. I still have
Castles,
still have two problems. Okay. So.
here, and then here.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean knight h2 is a double
And
check, so there's no chance. No bishop
yeah,
g3s or anything. But
yeah, knight h3 is double check. And also, it appears, let's see what, just for fun, what would be the most effective discovery here
probably
after bishop?
take the queen would be decent.
Okay, so let's say, so take the queen, and then they take our queen.
No,
Oh,
you're in
they can't
check.
take our queen.
You're in check.
So they have to go
Yeah,
here.
so now if you have knight c7, I
And
think we can. I can just pull my queen back
which
to
is,
seven and stop evaluating.
yes,
Come on.
yes. So, all right. Yeah, so maybe that's the reason why Robert didn't go for 92. Because 92, this what's 92? This Blitzkrieg approach seems pretty bothersome.
Yeah, it's. I think king f1 makes sense for Robert's style, and I think for the average player who's just trying to increase their rating as much as possible, they should play queen e2.
Yeah.
Because I think the opening has gone a little bit wrong, and when things go a little bit wrong, just trading queens is not a bad idea. They're the the costs of falling a little bit behind in development and activity is a little bit less when queens are not on the board.
Hmm.
So for me, if I'm white, my opening's gone a little bit wrong. Okay, let's play an endgame, and I doubt my bad opening is going to cost me as much. But I doubt Robert
I
feels like
mean,
he's played a bad opening. I mean, maybe he thinks knight f5 and ef5 is a good change, but and hey, maybe there's a point that's I don't know. Is the structure bad? Is the 4-on-3 a nice endgame for black? I'm not really an endgame expert, but
so actually in this position, if there were, and maybe that's another thing, although it would seem way early to be considering this. Um, but if we took all the pieces off the board and just left the kings on the board, black is much better. And the reason is, so they both have majorities, right? Black has a 4-against-3 majority on the queen side. White has a 4-against-3 majority on the king side. The problem with White's majority is that it's broken. He has those double pawns. And the weakness isn't that, oh, because the pawn is doubled, it might be easier to capture at some point. The major issue is White can't force a passed pawn on the king side. It doesn't mean that he may not be able to create it if Black is very cooperative, but all things being equal, if both players are playing decently, and we take all the pieces off the board except for the kings, um, Black can force a pass pawn. He can move his C pawn and D pawn. Um, and eventually touch down against the C2 pawn and create a pass D pawn.
makes sense.
White can't do that. White can move his pawns forward, and when he makes contact with Black's pawns, Black can just say, I don't care what you're doing. I'm not paying attention. He doesn't have to capture and create the possibility of a pass pawn for White the way White would have to do on the queen side. And so that gives Black a huge advantage. In fact, if I might digress a bit, that's one of the major themes in the Ruy Lopez exchange. So already in this position, there's an imbalance in the pawn structure. And often, let's say we play here and here, white usually quickly plays d4. And part of the reason for it is that, say, after a capture, so either with black capturing on d4 or black allowing the capture e takes, sorry, d4 takes e5. So say, I don't know, I'll pick a random move. Say he plays here, and then this happens. Um, what we're left with is the opposite of what we had in Robert's game against Dane, where you have black has a 4 against 3 on the queen side, white has a 4 against 3 on the king side, but white has a possibility of creating a passed pawn where black can't force a passed pawn on the queen side without help from his opponent. Um, Usually, black captures on d4, and then knight takes d4 happens. And this is the more classic pawn structure that you'll see in Ruy Lopez. So, Ruy Lopez exchange. And so, looking ahead, white understands that if he can navigate to an endgame, he has an advantage. Black should understand that as well. But black has the bishop pair and understands that his chances are better probably in the middle game. And so try to make his pieces as active as possible to counter the impending doom of going into this bad endgame. And that's kind of the underlying thought process as the players continue playing. So going back to the actual game here, Robert probably knows that the endgame wouldn't be great if they took all the pieces off. But exchanging one pair of queens is not getting all the pieces off. And so there's still a chance to fight. And I think that might have been a safer approach.
Yeah, and with that structure too, though, I do get your points on the re-exchange, and then also I'm seeing Rossalimo where they play d-takes sometimes and they get a lot of activity that way, or Nimzo Sicilian if they play knight f6, knight f6, e5, knight d5, and you play knight c3, try to provoke them to play knight takes knight, and you play d-takes and then go for the activity, and so you're getting
Yeah,
that structure. But none of those times am I seeing them shove that pawn two more times and kind of clog up their own bishop. So you know, I feel like that structure, maybe that structure is nice to take that f5 pawn and pull it back to f3, but I don't know.
yes.
Might have its own pros and cons though. I'm not claiming to be some expert on if the pawn's better placed on
Yes.
f5 or f3, but I don't know. It seems like a little bit like I don't know. My bishop's just running into that thing. It's kind of exposed. I don't know.
It's exposed and it forces the bishop to play a babysitting role at this moment. And after even if the f5 pawn were completely safe, there's still the question of how is that bishop going to contribute to an attack against White's king or position in general. And therein may lie Dave's idea of playing d5 early. Because the pawn on d5 is actually taking important squares away from White's bishop on d3.
Okay.
And we don't always think about it that way, that, this person has a potentially bad bishop. We should put pawns on squares of the other color while they're keeping their pawns on squares of the colors of the bishop. So in this case, the bishop on d3 is hampered by his pawn on f5. However, that rule or principle is most useful when the position's more blocked. In these kind of positions, it's also a useful technique to keep your pawns on the same color as the opponent's bad bishop, so that your pawns are helping his pawns to block in the bishop. But anyway, that's kind of theory. When it comes down to it, during a game, if you're spending too much time thinking about such principles, uh, you'll lose on time
Okay.
and not really get good chess anyway. Um, so yeah, so here Bishop G5 was played, um, continuing development, putting pressure on the diagonal, and also threatening knight takes D5, which explains C6, Queen D2, black castles, and then Rook E1, gaining exactly one tempo. And the bishop, the queen on F8 isn't really bad. And I suspect one of the reasons Dane played the queen to F8 was to leave room for the bishop to come to D6 in case of, say, a knight A4.
Well, so what's his alternative? Queen d6, bishop f4.
Yeah. And then you'd have to
Suppose.
run back to F8 anyway,
Yep.
right? Um,
I
so
feel like
that's a point as well.
I can see two things. I kind of like queenside castle, and I kind of don't because yeah, it's what's white going to do besides play h4, h5? So why castle kingside into that? But at the same time, like that diagonal looks a little weak. I don't know. I get a little nervous about yeah. Look, you can't play queen d6 because of bishop f4, and so you're playing a bit of awkward moves. But at the same time, yeah, clearly black's for choice at this point, just because how is rook h1 going to get into play? Um,
Hmm. Yeah, it's that's always a question when you play was like King F1 is figuring out what's going to happen to the rook. And yeah, there's specialized positions where you could do that and get away with it, but the key um clause there is getting away with it. In other words, it's something that's probably not a great idea, but in certain situations, it will work. Here, and I don't know if I went too quickly on those moves, but I wanted to fast forward to the good reason why Queen F8 was played. That I think Dane understood that he doesn't want to have his opponent owning that diagonal and wanted to be able to leave that square for the bishop. Besides the fact that the queen going to D6 would probably be really awful um, for tactical reasons. And so,
well, I feel like bishop f4 is just playing into black's hands a bit at this point because you have the bishop pair. That's his weak diagonal. You're just encouraging him to trade it. Um,
well, he didn't have too much of a choice unless he wanted to exchange on F6.
got it. Yep. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
he would
that's
exchange on
that,
e3. Exchange on e3 anyways. So maybe what about instead of h4 though? Can you anticipate h6 and not h4 seems odd then? Yeah, I mean
so
you got to get
it's
your rook active, but now
yes.
you're gonna be forced to trade your dark square bishop. So and that's your bishop pair. So maybe you want to move your queen first. I don't know, but that seems slow too. So
So this is one area where um, where logical thinking um, is good, but can also accelerate the demise of your position. So by playing King F1, for most purposes, White feels they have to activate the rook through H4, H5, and Rook H3 or Rook H4. Um, and so it's so that H4 becomes logical from that standpoint. But then there are other logical streams going on that you have to keep in mind at every move. And so when you're playing h4, it's with the logic of getting the rook out. Um, but if you saw that h6 was going to be possible and that you'd be forced to exchange off the bishop, then you say, well, maybe I shouldn't play h4. However, are you going to play h3 instead, which doesn't do anything for the rook? And so all of these problems, I believe, are related to the king on f1. Now, maybe there's an argument that exchanging off the bishops is a small price to pay for getting that rook into the game.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, and I don't see it. Yeah, I don't see really an alternative, anyways. You probably will have to.
Yes.
So yeah, not so bad.
Yeah.
Although h5 is, I don't know about h5. I feel like f5 is already discouraging g6 or whatever. So why do you need to spend time on that?
Well, the idea is to create another pawn on a light square, removing another square from the bishop on d3. Okay, I'm joking. Um, um,
Just make his goal is to make his own position worse. No, maybe he wants another option. He wants to be able to play rook h3 and rook h4.
so, there is actually some sense to it. If I don't know how he'd engineer it, but if he could get the pawn to h5, maybe find a way to defend that pawn, and then bring his rook onto the g3 square, um, putting pressure on g7, then having the pawn on h5 means that the pawn on g7's movement is limited. So here, and then you're looking at a maneuver such as this, as long as you can get the pawn defended on h5. Um, but it seems very clumsy and seems like it'll take too much time. And in the middle, and while that's happening, I doubt that Dane Zagar will be twiddling his thumbs in admiration or something. So, yeah, h5 seems a bit too committal. And yeah, so
One note,
knight c5. Yep.
one note here is we are going to have to speed up a little bit because we do have 7 games to get through.
Yes,
So
yes.
we are
So let's
giving a little
quickly
bit
go through
too
here.
much indulgence to Dane's game, but no, I am enjoying the conversation. But I just wanted to. We probably gotta
Remind me.
get it
Yes.
going because I want to make sure everyone gets some. Because what ends up happening is we spend. This happens in a lot of other broadcasts as well. We spend a ton of time on boards 1 and 2, and then
Not enough on the other boards.
yeah, we don't get enough time for board 7. So just want to mitigate that a slight amount.
Okay. Well, these. Let's do this. Why don't we can always come back to this game later, right? Let's
Oh, got some technical difficulties here. Just a moment.
before I got disconnected to us. Why don't we do a survey of the games going on? We can always come back to this game later.
Sure.
Um, so maybe we'll go to see UV um, versus Connor.
Yep.
And shall we go to the beginning?
Nice to see UV back. So back when I was playing every month, UV was playing every month, and
Hmm.
he's taking a bit of a break. But we're happy to see both UV and Jason kind of both came back. They're both super active at the club in general. They're playing Mondays and stuff, but super happy to see him back on Thursdays. And UV's actually been playing super well. He got really high placement at the Minnesota Open, and he's um, been playing well in weekend tournaments. So looking forward to
Yeah,
seeing his games
he's a
on
very solid
Thursdays.
player.
And we got him on camera too. We can actually you can see UV deep in thought right now on the camera for all our viewers. He's on the left there in gray. And yeah, you can see Connor. You can also see Connor playing both his boards. So Connor's playing on his open board right now in the distance. While he's gonna come back and luckily he's ahead on the clock, which is important because Connor is playing two games. So UV is getting a little bit of benefit in this game that Connor is distracted by a
He's
second
doing a
game.
simul.
Yeah.
Yes.
Usually it's Nathan that does this, but Connor also mixed it in it. And we actually had one really funny month where both Nathan and Connor did it, and they got paired on each versus each other in both sections. So,
Nice.
unfortunately, yep, unfortunately for Nathan, Connor won on both boards, but it was quite the sight to see.
That's interesting. It's not easy to play someone, especially if one of your um opponents happens to be a peer. So it seems, but okay, it's fun. No, UV is a very solid player, but he's had, as you mentioned, some good results recently. He had a really good Minnesota Open, and
Okay, so he's doing his dragon. I think
yes,
he's starting to learn the classical as well. Jason knows the classical super well, so I'm sure they practice together a bit. But it
uh-huh,
looks like I know Dragon is his home. Uh, Accelerated Dragon especially he'll play sometimes, but I don't know. Our lineup is Maroxy
okay.
Vines, so
Is it worth mentioning that the pawn on e4 is apparently free, but nothing in life is truly free?
ouch. Yep. So luckily UV's got his tactics hat on, and
Yes.
that's the move that I would play.
So it seems like they're getting a fairly normal looking position. White is going to try to get his pawn to d4, probably, or I might want to just put it on d3, play it sort of similar to the style of a King's Indian attack.
Yeah, this is a Connor specialty, by the way.
Ah,
He plays all sorts of. He plays two knight a3. He plays c3 bishop d3 bishop c2. He plays c3 queen c2. You know they all go together. They're
okay.
so he's very familiar with this structure, this plan, right, of developing in this kind of fashion, and he mixes it up, but he he's not playing random moves. He's playing a system and structure he knows.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was taken aback for a moment there, um, thinking that a pawn had been dropped. But okay. So the plan is to get the knight to d4. Something about White's position feels, I think the technical term is weird.
Yeah, I mean knight a3.
Yeah.
What's up with that guy?
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I think it's, I think it's the knight a3 that
Yeah, and it's a
just feels, yes?
Black has a whole like Rui Lopez black pawn expansion already, and I mean he doesn't have e5 of course, but you know he's got quite the expansion going on over there, and knight a3 isn't looking too happy about it to me. But
Yeah, it seems,
where's it
let's
going?
see. Yeah, let's
Bishop
see if it's
c2 in the way.
exactly. That's the thing that I think that's what bothered me about it is that often you're playing knight a3 with the idea of playing knight c2 to support d4 if you're planning on playing d4, and the queen's in the way of the knight, and so it's not even clear how the knight gets back into the game.
Yeah, I mean the only opening I'm familiar with knight a3 being acceptable in is Svechnikov, you know, maneuvering to e3 to really clamp down on d5, but it's not like Black's committed to e5 yet.
exactly. And even in that case, I think if White didn't have to go through A3, he probably wouldn't.
Hmm.
Um, but he has to, so he makes the best of the situation.
Yeah, that was forced back to A3 by from knight B5, not just voluntarily developed there.
Exactly. So here, so if we were to just stop here, it would seem like um, Black has gotten the better of the opening.
Yeah, definitely. They're playing normal moves, and White's trying to create imbalance, but
Oh, this is interesting as well. So I suppose was the idea to avoid to defend against E5 here?
I think that's just it's probably a standard dragon move for him, right?
Hmm.
He's it's probably a move he plays typically a lot. I'd say makes sense to me. He's just opening the bishop. He's preparing knight e5 if he wants to. Maybe thinking about knight c5 in some circumstances, if that makes sense. Just seems like
Hmm.
a flexible middle game move to me. I don't hate it at all.
Okay. Yeah, it seems interesting. I was just trying to figure out why he played it. And yes, so all those reasons seem valid. Um, and so rook there. Oh, that's a different approach.
Okay, there we see his point. He wants to get knight e5 in. Um, Although where's he going next? You don't want to play knight c4. That's justifying white's knight e3. Um,
However, he could make that knight very uncomfortable because by using the knight on c6 to go to e5, he's also created an idea of b4, smashing the queenside structure.
Queen c2 looking a little vulnerable for sure with that battery.
Yes.
Yeah,
Um,
and okay, yeah, Kizzy can play b4 now. Now there's no knight c4 jump, or maybe there
yeah.
is still, but you got to calculate it. But no, not quite. There's a lot of pieces on there.
And either way, even if he got the knight to c4, he's still going to end up with split pawns, A and C. So, um, let's say he played something, I don't know what random move we can find. Okay, well, say he captured on e5, captured on e5, uh, and then maybe this. So this seems pretty bad, though. So I should find another example line. What I was trying to show was that even after b4, if even in a situation where the knight could come to c4, the um, capturing b4 takes c3 would still leave white in a bad situation because of the weak a2 pawn and c3 pawn.
Hmm.
Um, and so it would appear knight d4 is trying to deal with that threat because now the queen is better protected. And so knight b6, and black's pieces are just looking pretty good, putting pressure on white's position. Queen e2, tired of having to
Yeah, I mean
deal with him.
White's rooks look good.
Well,
Might
they're
give it some space.
well, they're placed as good as they can be placed right now, but they're not really putting any pressure on black's position at the moment. Um, However, if black does open up the center, then the rooks will be very well placed.
Okay. I don't love that because I feel like you're justifying 93 developing in that fashion, but
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm a fan of that either.
but
It's it would seem like um you should let white try to make sense of his knight on his own. What alternative plans does
I,
black have though?
yeah, I guess Knight C2 is coming soon. He's going to be able to fix it. Um, but yeah, I guess that is a good point. Yeah, what does black do next? Um,
What exactly is wrong with knight a4? Okay, maybe that's too sophisticated, but the idea is after knight a4, so we're anticipating that in order to make the knight on a3 useful, he might want to go knight c2, and knight a4 makes knight c2 impossible. Well, it's just possible if he doesn't mind losing a pawn for nothing.
mhm.
So then you have to consider a different path to getting the knight active. And then the knight on a4 could reroute to c5, for example.
Okay, but was it serving any? Are we able to use the d5 score in any way though? Because we are kind of making our knight off sides a little bit. I mean, it's pressure in b2, but
Well, if it goes to b2, it's only going to be temporary because, so say, for example, and white felt compelled to play the bad move here. This is coming with tempo because it's attacking the rook. And so, say the rook runs away. Now you come to c4, and um, with this small force attack, you've gained a pawn, weakened his pawns further, and your knight is back to a nice, more central position.
yeah, I don't think you should gambit the b2 pawn or anything. But I'm just saying, let's say
Mhm.
black played knight a4. Now there's got to be a little bit of drawback principle. Maybe I can use the d5 square in some way. Maybe I can play c4. I'm just trying to think of if there's any downsides to that knight a4 pressure compared to being on b6, but maybe not.
Well, there might be, and that's why in order for me to justify going to a4, I reminded myself that c5 might be a better square for the knight than b6 was.
Yeah, I guess you are
No,
you
I don't know.
you got a new path to knight C, you can go knight c5 knight e6, but
Yes.
um, that I mean knight d4 though is already. I would love to play knight takes e6 if black just teleported their knight to e6 right now. I don't know. It seems like that's kind of maybe not. I guess that's opening the rook and giving more central pawn mass, but
Well, the idea of knight c5 is to suggest to white, would you like to weaken further? Because knight c5 is also attacking the e4 pawn. So say he doesn't play that. Say he plays knight here. And now we go knight c5, and now we have two units um, attacking e4. And in this particular position, that's why knight b1 is a better move, because now you can potentially play here to defend it without playing a weakening pawn move.
yeah,
However, that allows this, or maybe even better this. And um, white is losing material. So if he can't defend with a piece directly, uh, if he plays f3, he's now weakened more dark squares around his king. It is possible to maybe play this way as a way of defending the pawn. But now you're back to dealing with um, your queen relatively exposed due to the X-ray of the C file.
See, I feel like I don't absolutely hate f3. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yeah, I know I'm weakening the dark squares, but I'm also blunting that really powerful bishop b7. And maybe I keep my pawn on c. I really want to keep my pawn on c3 now because yeah, I don't want to run into bishop d4 check later. But I don't know. It's also seems I'm making a little check mark. I'm solidifying my pawn structure, but mainly the reason I like in general I like setting up f3 e4 against bishop b7 just because
Mm-hmm.
I don't like bishop b7 to be exerting pressure on you. It feels like I'm going to be playing f3 at some point eventually just to deal with
Mm-hmm.
bishop b7, but it could be I could be only thinking about, and I can't see the bishop totally getting into those dark squares that easily, but maybe the knights can. I don't know.
So this is one consideration. It's not the only, of course, but um, H F3 supporting E4 is great if the pawn on the H file is on H2. The one and it's not as if there's an obvious way for black to take advantage of it at this point, but this square might be a problem later on. So say H6 H6 G5 knight G6, right? And now um, it's harder to keep the knight out of F4 in the future because playing G3 would then weaken F3 and H3. Um, it's again, it's not something that is going to be immediately bad, but if you can avoid it, you want to because long term it can be an issue. Anyway, we've gone into the weeds a bit. Let's because
Yeah,
we
for
have other
sure.
games to look at.
Exactly.
Yes. So let's see here. So knight takes bishop back, defend the pawn, and the bishop wasn't really doing that much on f4. Besides the fact that I should also point out that if you try to defend the pawn, well, the pawn's already defended. E5 is a threat right now by black. So hence putting the bishop on a safer square right there, there. It attacks the e pawn, the rook comes back. So they're still doing interesting maneuvers. No one is fully forcing their will on the other. That seems very committal. A4 does. Um,
Yeah, maybe he's trying to lock the b2 weakness, I
got
guess.
it.
I
Yep.
think it makes a little bit of sense to me. He's got knight c4 and bishop g7 kind of indirectly pressuring it. I'm not sure how realistic it is to actually get at it, but
So this is where we are right now. And what do you think is going on? What do you think we have here?
well, black's position feels healthy to me. I mean, besides his queen seems a little bit low on squares. I'd be a little bit nervous about my queen,
Mhm.
but otherwise, I'm feeling. I mean, I still got queen c5 though, and um,
So my feeling is that black is better here. Um, Better enough to consider playing for a win. Maybe not yet, but it just seems black's pieces are better placed and um, are more efficient. So when the knight is tying the queen down against b2, that's a bad sign. And the knight can't easily be dislodged, um, which points out one of the strengths of the a4 move.
If the game in general to me feels a little bit odd because Connor's the high rated player, but
Mhm.
it seems like Connor's just been kind of like sitting around and letting Black improve their position continuously, and that's usually what you'd see if Black was the high rated player trying to take
Yes.
over, right? While White's just playing for a draw because and saying, "What are you gonna do?" But yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely
Yeah.
feels like Black's getting the better side of most of this game so far. Just
Yes.
the moves flow, everything is going, and actually, I think this is kind of a bit of a downside of playing in such a system-like manner as White. I do it myself against certain openings, but
Mhm.
yeah, if Black also knows their system and their typical development and of everything, like then their play just flows extremely easily as well. And UV knows the dragon structure very well, as we can see. Uh, and yeah, it's not hard for him to find good moves in when you let him put his pieces on whatever squares he wants to.
There is one looming issue, though, some important weakness of UV's position, and it's off the board. If the broadcast is correct, he has less than 6 minutes left for his game.
Yes, that's true.
So
So he's getting some time pressure here. So
yes.
that is a rough thing. Yeah. So yeah, if I'm UV, we know Connor is good and stuff. I'm not. I like my position, but I'm not going to press it too hard. Um, and I'm definitely going to be making a move here quickly and not getting into extreme time pressure where I could definitely blunder big time. So not trying to get the max out of everything. Let's play safe moves, build some time, see what Connor wants to do. Although that feels a little bit bad when you feel like you've been in the driver's seat most of the game, but I don't know. I don't feel like this is strong enough to press with 5 minutes versus 33 against a high rated
Well,
player.
if he was a speed, if he was if UV was a speed player, then yeah, he could play this as normal. But I don't know that he's that much of a speed player. He likes to take his time, look deep into the position, and so in some ways he might be at a bit of a disadvantage, especially because there's another psychological element here. As I mentioned earlier, his pieces just look better placed. They just look pretty, if I may say. And in order to make progress, you're going to have to do something to dirty the picture, right? And which is committal. And there's always a psychological battle being played when you feel your position is good enough that it should win on its own, and you don't want to take unnecessary risks. And the problem is that at some point your brain starts clouding what the definition is of what is necessary and what is not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where any risk becomes a necessary risk. Meanwhile, in order to win, you often have to take some kind of risk. And I think that's one of the problems that UV might be having in this position.
It's a good problem to have, though. My position's too good.
Yes. So, well, let's
Why?
let's
Why
go
me?
on to
Why me?
yeah, right. Darn, why could I have just blundered a pawn in the opening or something?
Yeah, then my play is
Um,
clear.
yes.
Dynamics in
Let's take a look
tennis.
at Nathan versus Ronan.
All right, National Master Nathan against every month regular Ronan. Appreciate Ronan playing every month.
The advanced variation of the Caro-Kann.
He's got some Caro.
So this is
It's definitely not. I'm not familiar.
No, I'm not familiar, and this doesn't smell
G4.
good.
G4. This is he's Nathan
No,
seems to know
G4.
the game. I don't know. Nathan knows his openings pretty well.
Oh, G4 seems perfectly fine. I'm not so sure about F5 here, although I guess maybe black doesn't have better. Um, this position has appeared at least a couple of times with Jobava playing the black pieces, so it's not losing. In fact, Jobava's done well with it. So let's see how the game continues. I'm not sure I like that move. Again, I don't know if it's theory, but it doesn't seem. I thought the idea was to play um, 97 here and then recapture on G6 with a knight or maybe even a pawn. But let's see.
I was solving a puzzle book this morning, and I had a puzzle between Kasparov and Jobava. So he
Oh,
he's he's been around for a while.
yes.
I think that was like a 2003 game or something.
So I'm still not understanding the idea of that pawn sack. What is black getting for it?
Maybe just their typical queenside play, and
All right. Well,
just gonna say I'm down a pawn, and I'm just gonna play my usual plans. But I have to be very
all right.
energetic and be very energetic about it, saying your pieces are slightly misplaced.
Yeah, well, of course, if you're playing, I mean, I should imagine that if you're going to play H5 here, you're not trying to play pretty chess. In terms of, I mean, I should say, nice orderly chess. You're not playing orderly chess. You're playing H5 in a position like this. So Ronan may actually know more about this position. Okay, so already he's getting some kind of play for it. And in fact, in this position, yeah,
We can see based on his clock use, he's feeling pretty comfortable. He's only used 10 minutes, but he does move pretty fast sometimes. But also, he goes in the tank when he needs to. So I don't know. You can never really totally tell based on Ronan's clock use if he's
oh, okay.
in prep or not. But I wouldn't be surprised. He looks like he's comfortable at least.
Oh, that's a picture you don't see too often.
Yeah, I mean,
This is this is one of those things where if you had another knight, you'd be thinking, how can I teleport it into D6?
but
Right? Thinking of
where's it
if
going?
if white could teleport a knight to D6 right now,
Haha,
that would be
checkmate.
checkmate.
Yes.
So,
If only those knights can teleport. Yeah,
yes.
unfortunately, not only can it teleport, it's four squares away from actually uh, getting to that square. So I don't think that plan is viable in this position. But yes,
No.
it is something I was thinking about. Yeah, you could also. I was thinking about, at least f6 is covered. But the problem is, what is 97 doing? Where is it going? It's not going to f5 anytime soon. So
Yeah,
okay,
97 seemed
you can you gonna play c5 knight c6 or something, but then okay, just play c5 while your bishop's connected. Um, Otherwise, I don't know. Yeah, it's just it feels like it constricts your position a little bit, and you don't exactly know how that knight is going to get into play until some of the pawn structure gets resolved more.
yeah, it just seems like an expensive move because I mean, unless he has plans of maybe moving the bishop to g7 or h6, in order to get that bishop to a useful square, he's probably gonna have to spend another move moving the knight away. It's possible he was overly scared about a sack on e6 or g6. I wanted to make sure that wasn't going to happen.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, that makes a little bit of
Uh,
sense to me that he's worried about knight takes g6.
yeah.
So let's just calculate c5, knight takes g6. Is that because c5 is what looks a little bit more positionally natural to me? Um,
So say we play, say for example, knight g6. We'll just go for it.
and if pawn takes, queen takes, I guess that is looking pretty dangerous. King move was the only move.
Oh, and there's a bishop g5. There's a bishop g5 alert.
Yeah,
It's done.
so
Stick a fork in him.
okay,
So,
so it makes sense. So Ronan actually just tactically alert to, um,
however, let's stop for a second because remember, we're looking at a chess game and not a game of drafts or checkers.
yeah,
Forcing the queen off of the important diagonal. And now, where does the queen go?
hmm,
So the idea being that no normal retreat of the queen will allow him to capture back on g6 in one move. So say he plays here. Now we go here. Black isn't out of the woods yet, but he's not getting mated. He's not losing
yeah,
his
yeah.
queen.
This already looks. I'd take black.
Yes. So it's important because it's easy to get into, well, um, he captures, so after c5, he captured my pawn, so I have to capture it back. Otherwise, I'm just a pawn down for nothing. And he's attacking my rook, so I can't really just ignore the
But we
knight.
got rook takes h2 as well, right?
Rook takes h2 is possible, but and you should look at rook h2 to make sure that um, isn't the best move on the
Yeah,
board.
c4
But
looks
why
strong.
don't we falsify White's idea? White's knight g6 only makes sense because the queen's coming to g6 next move. And if
Hmm.
we have a way to prevent the queen from getting there, we should take advantage of it. So here, there. So it seems like there was a good reason to play 97. Um, Queen b6. So he's preparing to castle queenside.
Viewers also mentioning knight takes e6 is a strong possibility instead of just knight takes g6
Aha.
after c5.
There. So here. Oops. Where are we? So here.
Well, yeah, yep,
C5.
yep. Knight takes e6 here.
Knight to c6. Yes.
Now he has to take because his queen's under threat.
Yep. And
So,
now he can force the variation.
yep, exactly. So it's better to take
Yes.
on e6 than
Yes.
g6.
So Ronan actually saw better than we did and decided 97 was the best practical choice there to
Hmm.
prevent any of that funny business. Because 97 covers G6. 96 is not working.
Uh, yeah, the viewer that pointed that out was the amazing Giordini. So I'm wondering if that's a certain national master we have in our local state, but could be someone else. But
Who's this?
I wouldn't be surprised based on finding some nice tactics there. The amazing Giordini. So thanks for your comment.
Could that be a handle for the ferocious Jordan Tim?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering because
Ah,
that would make sense.
yes.
Uh,
Yes, that's the sort
Classic
of
for
thing from
this.
his cookbook.
Yeah, and I know he's a tactics piece and got a draw against Sean Nagel. Sean Nagel thinking he can play the perk against Modern Killer. I don't think so. Gonna get a draw against you.
That's one of those that's one of those situations where you have to go back to the 80s and Mr. T and I pity the fool who plays such stuff against Jordan Tim. It's not a wise decision. No, this is a point I wanted to make here. when a4 was played, that the safe approach would probably be not allowing the pawn to get to a5. And maybe Ronan had calculated all this. Um, but it seems like White has gotten. It's turned into an interesting French position, French-like position. The question I guess I have is, what are the long-term plans? Or maybe this is not a position where you worry about long-term plans just yet. I just feel that allowing the pawn to a5 might be to White's advantage. Unless Black has time to maybe play to prevent a6 from happening. And then maybe even a6 is not that good. After this is played, though, Black's position is beginning to make some sense.
We got a king march here, so Nathan doing castle by hand.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of funny to
Wow,
me
all
how
of a
how
sudden.
often things transpose to French. So many
Yes.
other they become a good French, become a bad French. You get my French, your French. You know, you gotta know how to play these dark square pawn structures because it's gonna happen in your games whether you play French or not.
It's uh it's actually pretty interesting. Over the last several moves, um, Black has done some really good work, and I'm liking his position more than White's. Then again, I should admit I've got a bit of a bias to all to in favor of all things French. So, um, but it seems to me that Black is doing pretty well here. Well, it seemed like he was doing pretty well. I'm not sure about that maneuver, but um,
But it does feel like French stocks on the rise lately. But
yes.
I feel like if you're a Minnesota chess player and you play e4, it's definitely worth investing in some serious French prep because we got OK here, French main. We got Sammy loves the French. Uh, and I think there's a whole host of other strong master level players that like playing French. So it's definitely worth investing in if and
Now,
not
this is one of the difficulties.
forgetting
Yes,
about nothing.
this is this is one of the difficulties of playing the French. So remember, I told you at this point here that I was actually liking Black's position. The problem with one of the problems with the French is you get a position that looks nice, but then how do you make progress? And it's difficult to make progress in French in certain types of French positions. Like for example, this one. So if you're going to play, if you have a pawn structure with d5, e6, f6, g7, the fact that the pawn is on g7 means f6 is weaker, I should say. And that means that you don't have the possibility of capturing back on f6 with the g pawn, which means that playing f6 is always fraught with some danger that you'd be left with a backward e pawn and possibly a weakened g6 pawn. And that's what happened in the game. It's like we have these moves played here and then f6. And that's a move that has to be very carefully considered before playing it, um, because you're now taking on, or at least you should know, that you're taking on responsibility for defending two new attackable weaknesses that you just created on G6 and G6 and A6.
Yeah, G6
And all of
looks
a sudden,
extremely weak to me, but I do feel like in my French lines they play f5 against me constantly, and I play en passant, and then they end up with this e6 d5 structure, and to me it always looks horrible. I'm always like happy with my position, but then a lot of times it does work out for them. So I know I can't underestimate it either. It looks just like, oh, I should be winning. Like, what, you have like a backwards pawn and like weak diagonals to your king and stuff, but you know that's the standard plan too. So a lot of times, so they know if it's the I, if it works, it works, and it is one of the strange. I think there is a lot of plans like that in the French.
yes,
That's you got to just, hey, you got to play f5 and allow this backwards pawn, and that maybe looks anti-positional if you're doing it by hand, but you've studied a lot of master games where they played with that structure, and you know the right when it's good and bad. But maybe you're going to tell us when it's maybe it's kind of bad here because g6 is also weakness. But when is it? When do you think it's acceptable
yeah,
to have this as black?
I think G6 being an extra weakness. So if it was just the E6 pawn, it wouldn't be as bad. But with G6 also being a weakness, which then forces you to make your king a bit more exposed
Mm-hmm.
to the elements, um, it just feels like a story up for trouble. Now, White is not winning, I don't think, at this point, but it does become a bit more difficult. Black is having to, or at least needs to consider using his major pieces for babysitting duties.
Yeah, Dane is making an interesting point in the chat. He's saying that black is actually missing their bad bishop on d7 in this position, since now they have the backwards e6 pawn, and it would have been a nice.
Yes,
So a lot of times maybe when that transformation happens, black still has bishop d7 because
yes.
in it's like that Nigel
The
Short quote with
so-called,
the
the
French.
so-called,
Yeah, bad bishop. There is no bad bishops. There's only bad players. Uh, that's a Nigel Short quote, a little bit acidic, but
yes,
it makes sense because you know that bishop is going to be bad until it's good. And so it's been bad sitting staring at a pawn, but now e6 is backwards, and I want a defender for that thing. Okay.
yeah, yes. No, that's one of the interesting things with the French is like the pawn structure. Knowing the pawn structure, understanding the pawn structure is important, but it's also maybe more important to understand how the pieces are supposed to respond to the pawn structure, or what pieces do you have on the board to make one pawn structure okay versus the other one. If the bishop was even on c8 in this position, at least available to defend d7, then you wouldn't need to have your queen and rook babysitting it. And that's an important point, which the source of that point is also a Francophile, if I'm not mistaken. So he knows his French. Um,
Okay, so yeah, that's another evidence on e4 players. Man, you guys got a lot of French opponents out there.
so,
Eddie likes the French.
stuff.
Eddie played really accurate French against me, and yeah, he got me. I played Queen F3. He played B5, just let me play Queen takes A8, but my queen would get trapped. So
Wow. All of a sudden, so, and all of a sudden, there's no way to properly defend G6. It's very nice. Ronan's not going down um, without a fight. So this is a nice tactical sequence. The pawn on G6 is still um, not going to survive. Nate's given up an exchange, but the exchange isn't going to help keep his king safe. So I think this one is pretty much in the bag for Nate. Let's see what's happening with Ethan Hunt versus Jason.
So this is very nice to see both these players back. Of course, National Master Ethan Hunt. He did play in a Master squad, but he's got some kids at home, so that makes sense why he hasn't been as active. But super happy to see him back. Hopefully, we'll see him every month. Maybe attracted by the prize, or maybe Nathan convinced him. But in any case, we're super happy to see him. And then Jason is super happy to see him back as well. I know he's been playing on Mondays with UV, but
Mhm.
and usually kind of prefers a little bit faster time controls, I think. But super happy to also see him join for some classical chess. Jason is an opening beast. Uh,
Ah,
almost totally mated me in prep in a browser.
oh, really?
He's super good. He knows his openings.
Nice. So then this is going to be a bit of a treat for me, being that it's a Catalan.
Oh yeah, and he's
And
a Catalan man. Yep.
yes, so
And
it'll be interesting to see what the latest is in this line. Um, Ethan is more often than not going to play Queen's Gambit Decline against C44. So this is all normal. Um, seven. Okay. So we have the delayed opening, the delayed open Catalan uh, called, and Jason plays A4, which, according to um, young master from Iowa, this is what all the big boys are playing now. It used to be that a lot of the battles occurred in Queen C2, and then there's also the Sharp 95.
are you referencing
Um,
Joseph there?
not Joseph, actually. Slightly younger than Joseph, Michael Takahashi.
Okay.
He doesn't come out to Minnesota often. I think he might have played here maybe once or twice. But I remember I was looking at a game with him, and he says, "No, this Queen C2 it's not the thing anymore. That's A4 is
So
is the proper way to get an advantage."
Jason playing the trendy line. I'm not surprised.
So now, now I don't know about. It'll be interesting to see how popular this is. Because I don't know, I've seen it this early. Typically, I'll see Queen C2, and then only after A6 do you play A4. And so it seems to me that A4 might be a bit committal, and maybe Black um, might be able to benefit by finding a way to place his pieces so that he can take advantage of the weak B4 square. We'll see how the game evolves.
I'm thinking, White probably just wants to get that pawn back without much drama. Maybe he's just worried about b5 and complications, but obviously you can't play b5 with your rook hanging. But yeah, and
In
that's
fact,
why
actually,
I
yes,
don't play QGA. You can see uh,
yes.
why I am hanging my rook there. But I've actually got a
By the
very
way,
go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say I should correct something. The position that Michael corrected me on was not this position. It was the Queen C2. It was the Queen C2 A6 A4 line that he said was the way everybody was going, rather than A4 right away. Because I can't remember seeing this A4 this early. Again, I think it's a bit committal. And I think your point about the QGA is very important. especially if you're playing a QGA-like approach against an opponent who already has their bishop being shadowed
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
long
it's just
diagonal.
way too scary to me. I'm a closed cat. I play closed Catalan, so I play bishop b4 check, bishop b7, and just c6, leave that clamp, um, and try to get him that way. But my rule with QGA, I'm trying to relax this because I know chess doesn't work this way. But I don't. I only like to play d takes c4 if I know it's very good for black. So I'll never play a QGA position
Mhm.
that is zeros. It's mainline theory. There's so I would never play the pure QGA for sure. But then I'd also never play. I'd never pick this variation against Catalan because I don't like
Mhm.
I don't like releasing the center. I don't like making a second pawn move. I want to develop.
Mhm.
So I just like I like to be. It's going against two of my things I like. I like development and I like center. So
Yes.
uh,
No, that makes sense. You want to be able to you want to be happy owning your position, and if certain things don't jive with your chess nature, kick it out and or keep away from it, type of thing. Unless, of course, you have the time and willingness to change your chess nature, and that's a
yeah.
whole different discussion.
Well, that is a good way to universal players probably are a lot more dangerous, right? Only take one. Yeah, but I mean, and it does give a lot. I know the positions do give a lot more dynamic chances to black. So I'm probably going to be easier to for white to force a draw against playing in my risk averse manner. But
But if you're able to better navigate the position that's in front of you, that adds to your strength, either way. So yes, white might feel happier, but you feel less sad having to own a position that you don't want to be associated with,
mm-hmm.
right? So we rushed over this, and I won't take too much time, but I think it's important to note that um, indirectly, white's already facing some punishment for the early A4. Black is already better developed and is already counterpunching against white center. And I feel black is at least even here
Yeah,
using tactics. Yeah.
I feel like black's a little bit better already, which is making sense. I mean, we got to remember too. We got National Master Ethan playing against a little bit lower rated player, so it is, if these guys just make a million natural moves, Ethan probably will take over just via inertia. But and yeah, I'm feeling like the position's healthy for him already, and he solved you know opening specific problems. So I am thinking black is for slight choice here, but definitely not. Jason's position is also healthy. Bishop c1, I'm a little bit nervous, but I feel like it's kind of been a color swap. You know, it almost feels like the
You
black
mean
pieces.
black
Black said
is
white
playing
pieces.
white and white is playing black? Yes.
Yeah, it's like white's gonna now white's got to figure out how do I solve my development, and black's fully developed. That's usually what happens when you play the white pieces. So I do feel like, yeah, if I had to flip the engine on right here, I think it'd maybe be minus zero point 0.5.
Yeah, I just again I'm coming back to the 784. And I'm happy I caught myself a little late, but caught myself anyway. Um, not slandering Michael Takahashi for advocating A4 move seven because yes, it's Queen C2 and then A4 uh, after Black has committed a move to playing the pawn to a6. Here it just seems white has gotten his pawn back, but black is just better developed and already losing a pawn.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah,
It is pretty funny to me when these Catalan games and just the D4 openings in general. I feel like everyone's fighting tooth and nail over these like little move order tricks. Like, I'm not gonna let you play bishop before check. I'm gonna wait to play queen c2 until you play a6. I'm gonna like do this little
mhm,
do every little min max trick because the positions end up somewhat equal. So they're versus then I think to the e4 side, they're like, okay, let's just play Sveshnikov. We'll both blitz out 14 moves here and go from there. There's no little subtle no little subtle move order tricks where everyone's trying to get each other on the e4 side, but d4 seems to be happening in every game.
yes, yes, there is. Well, I think part of it is that a lot of e4 players are also somewhat maximalist in their approach. So um, there may be some subtle move order ideas, but the subtlety is in order to make the hammer blow even harder. Unlike in D4 type stuff where okay, well I'm doing this subtlety so I can have a half a pawn strength extra weight on some obscure square, right? It's not as critical as it is in many E4 um, openings, but the rewards can be just as good or better. This,
Okay, so now it's just pawn up.
yeah, it's just pawn up and trying to show decent technique.
Wait, how did he win that pawn? Just curious. I think I missed
Oh,
that.
yes, it was during the dance, as White is trying to regain his pawn. Ethan, um, Queen is defending the bishop and also defending the pawn on b7. Capture, capture. And now, because you have to recapture the queen, it allows this discovered attack on the queen, winning the pawn.
Got it. So he never was really able to get his pawn back safely. Um,
Exactly.
Finally did, but got hit with the counterbow tactic, and so still. So yeah, we're seeing the upsides of QGA. You can sometimes just keep the extra pawn.
Yes. Well, if White um, doesn't play as sharply as is necessary,
Hmm.
then Black can get away with his chess crime, so to speak. Oh, that was a close moment. I'm sure he must have seen it, but for a second I was like, "Oh, that's an annoying check." So now, um, the problem here, looking at endgame technique in general, is how do I create a pass pawn if I'm a pawn ahead, or if the king is exposed, how do I get to the king? And f5 helps with both ideas. So now we're closer to getting our e4 pawn moving. And it just so happens that the bishop might be running out of squares soon as well.
Yeah, so now he's offering the queen trade. That seems a bit odd.
Yes,
Okay, and he's
that's interesting.
oh, okay.
That's
Wait,
interesting.
did he have
Oh, he found a way to hoover all the pieces off the board.
yeah, but did he have to
This
play
is actually pretty.
did he have to play king h2?
I don't think he had to play king h2.
Let's play king h1, right?
Um, yeah, king h1.
But
Although there is a downside to king h1, which is that the king is further away from the action. So if you're looking, if you consider King H1, um, then assuming this happens, and here now the king is going to take an extra move to get into the action. It's further away from the queen side, um, and so that would be a reason against it. However, that's a sophisticated concern. While playing here just allows the liquidation of everything, and now he has no chances. At least with the other position, he would. So King H1, I think, does have a positive compared to this approach. Yeah, now there's no, as long as both players have enough time, or more importantly, as long as the player of the black pieces has enough time, this
Yeah,
should
and
not
they both
be,
got plenty. So,
yeah, Tiffany. All
mhm.
right. So, oh, some other games have finished. So let's go to, are these other
Yeah,
games?
those are not games. So we only got 7 boards tonight. Those are
Oh, okay.
somehow uploaded, but and showing some of the other matchups.
Okay.
But we got 8 boards total,
Let's
so
do
I'm not sure we're missing one board, but we're not going to get to them all. I mean, we wouldn't get to the eighth board anyways. I
Yes.
must feel like so. It's almost blessing in disguise. There's only 7 tonight. Um,
Yes.
but
So
yeah,
I'll try and be less talkative, and we'll go towards. So Daniel Stenke, he's new
yeah. So
in the premiere section.
yep, and he's been playing the open section for months and months, and I think he started playing Premier either last month or the month before. But yeah, he's definitely kind of climbing, improving player. Very solid player at the club. Plays every month, and you can tell analyzes his games. So and yeah, wow, look at this result. I mean, a draw against Miles.
Yeah.
Miles is a heavy hitter in the club, so he has won several months, and yeah, including last month, he was sole winner,
Mhm.
including a big upset against. I mean, not a big upset, but a win against Connor in the final round, who's slightly higher rated. And he played gatekeeper for Connor making national master last month. So Miles is, uh, yeah, he's definitely another player that keeps the club really interesting. We really actually have a very competitive club. You know, Connor does beat up on people, it seems like, but at the same time, he just lost to Miles. He recently lost to Dane. Um, and yeah, we got Ethan coming in, so that you never actually know who's going to win each month. We've got Miles winning, Connor winning, Nathan winning. Uh,
Cool.
we got Ethan Hunt, national master in the mix, and I know I'm missing other
Well,
front
they
runners,
Zagar.
but yeah, Dane
They
Zagar, of
Zagar, I
course.
think,
Yeah,
won
hmm
full time. So no,
yeah,
this is an interesting result because uh yeah, actually I was watching part of the game live, Miles versus Connor, because I remember hearing that Connor would get master if he won that game, and Miles um, denied his hopes and dreams for at least tournament more.
yeah. That was a pretty hard fought game though. Connor even had a moment there with a win on the board. Uh, so yeah,
Wow.
but Miles definitely, and actually he's been coming up. He comes up in the top of a lot of these clutch situations at the end. He also had a pretty epic draw. I think it ended up being a draw against Dane. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, him Miles against Dane is another marquee matchup where there's always fireworks, coins on the board
Well,
when the game ends.
uh, are they gold coins
Yeah, yeah.
um
I don't know. You
or
know, we're
or
we're club
do they allow yeah?
we're club players, so maybe they're chocolate gold coins, but
I was gonna say there's like third rate NFTs they toss on the board or something.
yeah,
Um,
you know, it's still pretty, even if both sides could have improved in various spots, but they have exciting games. But And Miles, yeah, he's big. This is not surprising either. Is white. He plays Nimzo Larson all the time. Um, so yeah, that's his approach with white, and it looks like he also focuses on his black openings a lot. He seems to be really booked up in e5, playing main lines. Um,
Mhm.
so that whole approach makes total sense to me as kind of an opening nerd who's now trying to switch to fixing my tactics. Openings as white are easy, and if you want to just play a system as white while you focus on getting your black openings in order and your tactics and end games, I don't think that's the end of the world, especially when you pick,
Mhm.
and it's a kind of London system like approach, but different and unique, and you're not going to have people quite as well prepared playing Nimzo
Yes.
Larson as you
Nimzo,
are. Go ahead.
the Nimzo Larson is an annoying system to face, um, for me anyway. And so I think it's a really good choice. It does provide, I think, much more strategic complexity than the way many people play the London. And so with that comes more chances of winning. And so I think it's his choice is his choice of the Nimzo Larson is pretty good. I'm kind of
Hold on.
running over the
I
yes.
don't I don't like G5 there. What's up? I mean, I feel like you're ruining your chance of ever making an outside passer.
So yes, I don't like G5 either. I think G5 is a little too helpful. You don't have to rush with these pawn moves in the ending, especially if you're rushing with your pawn moves in a way that's going to make sure you have no winning chances. Black's best chance is to create a pass pawn on the H file. It's not clear that he'll win with it, but um, just for argument's sake, say this were played instead, and
Yeah, I mean, takes
White was
almost
nice
looks
enough to
close to
play.
winning for black, right? I mean,
Exactly.
you're going to distract at that pawn. You're going
Um,
to enter on f5.
yep. And create a mini fox in the chicken coop situation. So if you just to show folks here, here, and you could go here immediately, but then you will drop the F pawn. Well, actually, maybe this is not even the most accurate way. So after capturing here, maybe even body the king with this. But black definitely is the one with the winning chances here, after f6 or whatever. The By playing g5, he's pretty much given up any hope of creating a pass pawn, and could find himself in trouble after f5. Okay, now
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
really confused.
we got Jordanian chat saying he also thinks h5 is potentially winning. So maybe we should think about if he played h5 g5, is that also totally winning? Just that protected outside passer, or is it still potential drawish? Yeah, probably
I
winning.
think this is probably winning.
Yeah, and what about just staying
Yeah,
passive? So
this
what
is
about just playing like king g3, ignoring it?
king g3. And yeah, so let's see how this goes.
But I think this is pretty clearly a better chance than g5, but it's
Yes.
maybe unclear if it's totally winning or not. It's even potentially winning for black, which would be quite a missed chance against Miles.
I think it's still even. I think
Yeah,
that because of White's pawn on e5, he's able to, because of the pawn on e5, he's able to
yeah. Eddie says he doesn't think
maintain.
white ever has to take. He can just shuffle the king around.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
but clear, Daniel's.
Yes.
I can see what Daniel's trying to do as well. He's trying to create. He's trying to lock in the draw. He wants to lock his king out. So it's a little bit, I would say,
Ah,
of a timid mindset, but he wants to create a barrier where the king can never get in, and his king can control the only entrance squares. And he's already kind of got that going on the queen side, especially if he plays a5, because then he can just
A5.
react to either pawn move with the other pawn push. And
Okay.
but
So this
your
is
mindset wants to be
him.
pass pawn, not locking your opponent's king out, ideally. But yeah, it makes sense. Miles just won last month. Daniel's happy with the draw. He sees
Uh-huh. Yep,
the
A5. Okay.
possibility. So
So
yeah,
yeah, so he
full
just wants
lockout.
to create
Yeah, now we got a full
okay.
lockout. Look at you can highlight how everything's locked. Yeah, that king's never getting in at this point. And the king
Oh,
made a
did I have it where okay.
yeah. Look, every entrance square now is covered. We got
Yes.
there is no way to make a break for the king to get in, and so that was Daniel's goal. And now he can just stay passive on e7 and say, "What are you going to do? You can't do anything. No matter what you do, your king can't enter. I'm controlling all those squares." So
Yeah, he'll be there waiting for Godot. Uh okay. So G5 had a decent point behind it. Nice. That's a good result for the young man then.
yeah,
Um
congratulations, Daniel. And we do have Eddie in the chat. Eddie is very
oh
excited that
good.
he's excited that you're commentating this month. I was talking to him about it, and he said
Oh,
he's gonna
cool.
play your favorite openings. So
Okay.
we'll see if he holds true to that. We know Eddie plays every opening under the sun, so he might be able to actually execute that.
Yes. Well, I'll say that he missed the mark on move one because I think I'll often play d5 here, but
Okay.
d5 is um, very legit, especially since we know that Ed is very comfortable playing the Sicilian, so that if White decides to play e4, then basically Grand Prix or closed Sicilian. But yes, if he was trying to mimic my play, I'd play d5 in this move.
Well, he's probably trying to copy your French and not really ready to copy
Ah,
your bird repertoire. So Torfi
okay.
throwing the bird to Eddie,
That
and
really worked.
Eddie having to just deal with it with his usual antidote. I can't blame someone for not having more than one antidote to the bird. I mean, come on, you just pick your system and you're done.
Yes. So Eddie's gotten his pieces. Let's go back a little bit because it seems as if White made some interesting choices. Eddie is always ready to grab as much activity as he can. So that d5 makes sense. And here, Queen a4. So Queen a4 is I don't know the theory of the bird um, per se. Queen a4 isn't bad. Like it's not losing anything immediately, but it seems as if it's almost begging for a6 b5, losing more time, which is what
Yeah,
happened.
my my vague understanding of the bird and the Dutch, the reason why it's kind of bad to throw that f pawn is because I've heard it's making two weaknesses with one move. It's not only the diagonal that everyone knows about this a7 to g1 diagonal. Of course, you're going to be watching over for that because it's part of your opening, but it's also about the second rank. So there's a lot more time. There's a lot of times a rook can eventually get into the second rank, and it's way more powerful playing stuff like rook takes g2. That's my layman's
Yeah.
understanding, at least, of like
So,
conceptually why f4 is not an ideal first move. I mean, it's no one g4 though, so still got some merit.
so I think. there is some advantage to playing f5 as black compared to playing f4 as white, in that as black you already have some information about what white is going to do, and you can design your play around what white has already played when you're playing your f5. With f4 as white, it's not as simple, and black is the one who has the advanced information as to what he wants to do. Now, not to say that the bird is losing or anything dogmatic like that, but there is an advantage to keeping the opponent guessing. That said, if you mess around against a bird, you could easily find yourself on the wrong end of a brilliancy submitted to chess life or something. So um, you shouldn't take it lightly.
Yes. Well, there's also that infamous, you can play f4 knight h6, right? That's like a mainline way to play, and everyone likes to
Mhm.
do some trap with that. So
Yes.
it all just looks a bit funny when people are lining up for like the Olympiad and playing night play. I remember that was one time I actually saw that. Imagine you got Olympiad game, you're up all night preparing, and your opponent comes to the
Yeah.
board, plays one f4. You're like, are you kidding me? They're like, okay,
Now,
fine.
one thing,
You're gonna trick me? Knight h6. Okay, what do you got?
yes. Yeah. No, this is an interesting position in a way. I mean, black is for choice already. Um, and so white has to resort to some artificial maneuver to make his position make sense. And already his queen is wondering what she's doing with her life right now. So there's a pawn attacked on a2, but even more importantly, the queen is running out of squares. Um,
Yeah,
okay,
that's
so
that
this is
queen
one
is
play.
not. It's not the happiest piece. It's like put me in, coach.
Yes,
I want I
exactly.
want to do something.
And this is not the kind of position you really want to have against Eddie Wasserman.
Rook b1 already
Uh,
feels a little okay. Gotta get those rooks connected.
hmm And where Eddie has all his pieces in the fight ready to go. And this move, though, seems a bit suspect. What happens? Yeah, what's the idea here? Oh, that still doesn't seem okay. I get it now. I get it now.
Attacking a2, attacking a3.
Yeah, and the bishop on e2 is undefended. So worst case scenario, you can play bishop takes d4 to win the pawn back. Say, for example, after I don't know, queen a3 or something. So uh, say after this, that this was the pawn back because of the bishop hanging on e2. So okay, that was clever.
Yeah, so back it up just a minute. Right before he played queen e6, what was White's move? Was that just total lack of tactical awareness, or was it somehow necessary?
You mean at this
Um,
point here?
yeah, so he played one move earlier
Hmm.
before he
I
played
might not be
before.
syncing
Be,
with your board. Let me see.
no, yeah, I think you're synced.
Okay. Am I
Um,
synced?
Scroll it up a little bit. It's a little bit misaligned now. The window. Okay, yeah, now it's good. But yeah, just before he even played Queen E6, yeah, so two moves back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Actually, never mind. I actually didn't even have a big point on this. So. It's not worth it.
Well, I'm trying to see. Okay, we are synced again, right?
Yeah, we're sinks.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, he just had to play queen takes b4. Okay, so I was off base. I was wondering if he played a slow move, allowing queen e6, or if that was just total natural progression. But he was recapturing on b4, so he didn't have a choice.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So we're here, and it's still an interesting fight because they have bishops of opposite colors, and maybe the most important, which you don't need to ask Eddie. He'll look for some way to inject some dynamism into the position anyway. But in these bishop of opposite color positions, um, when it's not a pure endgame, the person who's attacking has advantage. And so this e5 is from that point of view, is a splendid move, opening up more lines so his bishop can start harassing white's pieces.
Plus, what feels better than to play a pawn move into a square controlled by two enemy
Yes.
pawns? Like, there's
Yes.
nothing better, right? Like, it's like, but you didn't see that. Like, and it's like,
Yep.
oh, man, no, I didn't shoot. Like, come on, my pawn was controlling. You, what can I think about? I can't think about that many things. Like, two pawns controlling the square. I gotta think about that candidate move too. Are you kidding me, bro?
This is um one of the reasons why. So actually both um well, this is mostly with Eddie. So I'll have, to borrow a boxing metaphor, I'll have games where I'm playing against Eddie and I'm outboxing him for, it's a 12 round bout, and I'm outboxing him for 11 rounds. And at every single moment, I know that he can unleash a knockout punch. And this sort of thing is just, um, he's just in his element right here, right?
Yeah, I'm actually, I think he's more than in his element because he's got plenty of time on the clock. Usually he's got 30 seconds by this point. So I'm thinking Eddie did some
Yes.
really nice time use this game to actually be having 10 minutes on his clock for the endgame portion. So,
Whoa, Nelly.
all right, he wants queen f2, I guess.
Or Queen H2, either one
Yeah,
will suffice.
or maybe even bishop h2. Who knows?
And
Bishop
so he
h2,
decides to capture.
bishop h2, queen f2 looks pretty good at a certain point there.
Yes. So Queen H3, capture there.
Okay, now the b pawn's looking crazy. Okay, what is this? Oh, yep, mate
Sweet.
threats, mate threats, queen e1.
Very
All right,
sweet.
Eddie's been doing some puzzles with us, so he's
Ah.
he's
So
going
yes,
to
you mentioned
the
something
next
about
stage.
puzzles. What's to say about puzzles?
Yeah, so well, I used to study with Connor a lot, and so uh, then Connor brought his new friend Mitch to the club, and then Mitch and Connor were doing some puzzles, and so we kind of joined up and we've been solving think like a super grandmaster by Michael Adams,
Ah,
which is
okay.
it's an interesting book that has a lot of good puzzles that are difficult, but then also it shows how different ratings from like 1400 up to 2700 solve the same puzzles in their thinking process. And
Mm-hmm.
so we'll solve the puzzle for a while, and then we'll usually go in rating order. So Mitch will
Cool.
describe his ideas, and then I'll describe mine, and then Connor will describe his, and then we'll read through all the solutions from the various ratings, and then we'll read the solution. And yeah, Connor always gets like full points plus the bonus points. So and we try to keep up with him.
Yes.
But
Oh, this is a very neat tactic.
and we've done the same thing with Eddie. Eddie joins in
Okay.
on some of those study sessions, and that's why we got the Discord going now. So instead of doing that in kind of private message video calls, we're gonna do it more in the Discord lobbies. So if other people see us solving in there, they can join in and solve
Okay.
with us.
Excellent. That's an excellent tool for improving your tactical play. So yeah, so this was a pretty decent game by Eddie. I think Torfi, I felt in the opening, again, I don't know the theory of the bird too well, but Queen A4 just had a bad spell to it. That it's there are moves like that where you play the queen out, but you always have to keep in mind that because the queen is so powerful, so valuable early in the game, it's going to be subject to attack by other pieces. And if they can make those attacks against the queen in a way that gives them an advantage of some sort, then that would be kind of retrograde proof that the queen move was not great. So if we go way back, after queen a4 and a6, all of a sudden black is going to get a useful space advantage on the queen side. And even if it's not winning, it does create conditions for winning later.
Okay.
So let's see, young John Blomer. I'm going to rush to the end of the game here to see um, how much time you spent.
Yep.
Now, what is
So
the time control for the viewers
it's
here
90
and for
plus 30.
myself?
So this is John's fastest game yet, and I criticize John every week for not thinking about any of his moves, and I beg him to please use his time. And I'm sure he watches the broadcast, and so he's probably he's trying to he's trying to say, you know what, Chris, I'm gonna use even less time. Yeah, because last week he used like less than 5 minutes or something, and then Eddie told me that most of the time he used it was actually him watching Eddie's game instead of on his own while his own time ticked. So, John's on a mission
Oh,
to show everyone how good his intuition is, which it is pretty good, as we're going to see from this game. But
okay.
at the same time, my argument is he's not getting any practice for a very valuable skill, which is focus for long games. And so even when you're playing low rated players, if you can force yourself to really think and find the best moves and beat them in the most merciless way possible, including calculating lines and alternatives, and maybe not play moves because they have defenses that they won't see, but it doesn't matter. A better player would see it, so you're not going to play that move. That's all valuable training, in my opinion, for when you actually are playing those stronger players. You need to do that if and your intuition is not
Yes.
just going to win like you might hope. But that said, it's still impressive, and I'm definitely not not unimpressed by John just because he used no time. But I think what would be that next level if he actually did.
Well, you never know. Some folks, if they think too much, it actually produces inferior moves. So
Yeah,
maybe he's figured out that this works for him. There was that book that came out I haven't read, Move First, Think Later.
yeah,
And so, which I guess comes down to trusting your intuition. It works for him. I guess he could continue doing it until it no longer works.
fair enough.
So this is
So it makes sense. So John longtime
Ripto.
D4 main, and Thomas is very booked up as well. He's kind of, you can tell he does his chessable courses. So he plays some Kalashnikov versus E4, and then I've seen him play Grunfeld every game. And Thomas, yeah, strong player. He just beat me in a blitz game recently on Wednesday, and he's kind of new.
What's this USCF rating? I don't think
He just
I've
crossed
not played it before.
1700. So yeah, and we got Thomas in the chat saying he got killed in
Okay.
his game, but so it was his first game. It was his first taste of Premier, and he did get paired against John, who is a beast lately. So no hard feelings. John knows what he's doing, and I basically got my Nimzo killed in the exact same way by John. Just
Oh,
total autopilot. He's playing with known ideas. But okay, yeah. If we do
I'm
back up,
curious. Yeah, let's back up.
okay, yeah. Here's where yeah, and he is kind of getting his cake, having his cake and eating it too, because he's expanded a ton in the center, and then he's playing H3, a bit of a slow move. clearly preparing f4, so you can't play knight g4
Hmm.
and drop, but then it feels like f6. Yeah, pull back f6 because I do not love f6. I can see, I feel like you're kind of acquiescing to White's play where he's taking a whole center. He's, what has he done? He's taken a ton of center and he's got a lot of good positional factors. But what has he done? He's fallen behind in development. You're fully castled. You have your pieces fully developed, and so you have to. I feel like somehow, try to exploit that. So maybe rook c8, and then I want to, if you play rook takes rook, queen takes rook, and now you play
Let's
f4,
let's step back a bit though. So in this position, what is White's biggest threat,
f4.
and why is that a threat?
Well, the knight currently has no squares.
So if you play rook c8, let's put it on the board. Rook c8.
Okay, f4.
How does that address f4?
Yeah, so let's try
So we
rook
do
takes
rook
c1,
takes c1,
queen takes, and
queen takes.
let's try queen a5 check, just in case.
Check.
Or maybe bishop d2.
Also bishop e2.
So that's maybe not helping.
So and yeah, it's not possible to defend against both threats. Now, granted, that this means that White is forced to hang out in the center for a move more. Um, but then this is better than trying to get fancy with
Yes.
this and having to calculate this, for example. Although, yeah, this is not, which then allows the knight
Yeah. So what
to
about
skip to
instead of
c4.
okay, yeah, queen a5 just to enable rook c8 for knight c4.
Yes. But the problem is that after this, we don't go king f2, we go bishop d2. So we have two threats going on at the same time. And now if you try for rook c8, I can just play rook take, a queen takes rook and bishop a4, bishop a5, sorry, as one possibility. So it's actually, this is actually a good point. Um, because,
Yeah, no, I remember because I was looking earlier. That's why. Okay, so play rook c8 again because yeah, no, and it was some computer point that was pointed out to me. That's what I was thinking of. So if you play
okay, so,
rook c8 instead of f6, and then
mhm.
you play f4, now I think you can play. Yeah, okay. There's some line. There's some line with a crazy bishop c3 at the end. Um,
Oh, maybe there's actually, let's see, let's look at this a bit further. So maybe there's this, this, and if bishop d2, queen a2,
and pawn takes knight.
and pawn takes.
Yeah, I'm not.
Why is this isn't working? There's nothing good about this. Wait, maybe there is. So rook c8.
Yeah, so this is just computer lines I was looking at earlier. So f6 makes a lot of sense, honestly, Thomas. But
Yeah, I don't know. I think
this is hard.
f6.
This is hard. Okay, f6 also seems a bit annoying. So is there anything we can do besides f6? Yeah, I know computer said rook c8,
Um,
but that looks like computer stuff.
yeah, I don't know that a normal sub 2800 human is looking at all that mess
Yeah, there's no way.
after rook
I mean,
c8.
you could see the position demanding it because of Black's lack of kingside development and amazing center, where you're just like, if I don't play for dynamics now, I'm gonna get killed. But
But yeah, it's still difficult to commit oneself to that big of a commitment when that final position after rook c8 that we looked at, yeah, it seems like white has a lot of problems, but it's not. It doesn't seem like he's dead just yet. Although now I'm thinking about it, in that position, so maybe there's a bishop a4 coming next to make the queen really sad about her existence. But seeing that position from this position would require a level of tactical vision that um, would be hard to commit to this early in the game, I think, and for a regular human. I think f6
Your bishop
doesn't lead
g7
to a
just
great position.
your bishop g7 just that's your glory piece and it's dead now.
Yeah, it's. I think the problem was earlier. After d5, um, um, after, in fact, maybe go back a move further. So, because somehow I don't think for a brief period I tried playing this system as white, and I don't remember um, black getting such a dangerous position that early.
Well, yeah. Grunfeld doesn't look like my opening choice personally, but I know it is strong. So you're brave. You're braver than I am, Thomas.
Yeah, I couldn't wrap my mind
Yeah,
around it.
especially the Grunfeld mainline with those with that c3, d4, e4. Man, I would not like playing against that thing.
This might be a reason. Okay, that's why it got so critical. So this is one of those things where, so the Grunfeld is has a different character from a lot of D4 openings. We're talking about the subtleties of the openings in regular D4 openings where you're trying to get this in and try not to have to spend a move on a check, etc., etc. The Grunfeld, because of its weird open nature, um, precise moves are important. Knight c6, yeah, I was wondering why knight c6 here. The reason why this is important to play right now and is better than waiting till after 0-0 is because white gets to put his rook on c1 and can immediately respond to this with d5. Whereas in this position, after knight c6, um, white would have to spend another move to get d5 in because of the pressure down the long diagonal, which gives black an extra move to get his development going. Um, and so the most popular move here is rook d1, protecting the pawn center, but that means the rook isn't available to keep c4 under control, which this has been seen in high-level games too. But it just seems to me that somehow after this, um, black's position became critical. Now, maybe maybe another thing that
Yeah,
black, yeah,
I just checked if John, at least the online account I know of John's has games in this, and because I thought he might just be blitzing this all from memory, but he kind of he has games up until CD4, So I don't think he was totally in prep unless, but there's a good chance he was too. This is John's type of position, by the way. He loves going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Just he wants to go forward every single move, and he will if it's good or bad. So in this position, it's good, and and same thing against the variation of Nimzo I played against me. Then
Mm-hmm.
one successful game I had against John was he played a French and he just went G5, G4. He did
Mm-hmm.
that, and the attack there was not good, but he just kept rolling with it, and you know fell victim to the counterattack. So I would say, yeah, if you're easier said than done, especially when you got the black pieces. What are you supposed to do? But John does like to go forward. So if you are looking to try to punish John, just play solid and calculate those go forward moves. Make sure you can make them break, and I think that's a good strategy.
Maybe the problem for black in this position is as simple as don't find some other move um, as an alternative to bishop d7. Because bishop d7 like kind of puts the knight's position, makes the knight's position more precarious. Because yes, after this, white is definitely for choice. The black bishop
Yeah,
on g7 is not worse, but
I feel like this has got to be at least plus 1.5.
would be my guess. Yeah. Um,
It's just
and then
too much central
time is
space,
coming.
and it also helps that there's still three minors on. That's got to be a bit, and they're just look. Both bishops are bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like don't have any. Black doesn't even have one piece in the position to kind of build their position around. Um, just all three minors are not getting what they want.
Well, when you allow white to become king of the hill, that hill in the center with
Hmm.
all its pawns, yeah, bad stuff can happen.
Yeah,
It's just
I like to make all
this
my
was a
central as black. I want to make all my central breaks in prep if I can. So I would never. I would never. I mean, I played it as a kid, but I would never play the perk for that or an opening like that for that type of reason. I don't want to be in the middle game, just desperately trying to break in the center, and my opponent's been preventing it, and I never make it happen. And so now I'm just going to suffer the whole game. I want to make my breaks in the first 10 moves and then go from there with whatever structure results.
yes. Oh, this is oh, Mr. Hayden found a way to get wait a second, what's going on there? Had he gone down two pieces before? Oh yeah. So at this moment he was already two pieces behind.
Oh, yeah. And I do also want to compliment Thomas for spending some good time use even when his position got kind of hopeless to really
Mm-hmm.
just try. Like, that's a valuable skill, too. You do that. It didn't work out for you this game, but you make a habit of that, you will get some swindles by just leaning
Yes.
in even when your position's hopeless. So John found all the best moves, unfortunately for you, that's in this one. But yeah, if John and also John moving like this, you are he is prone to blunder if there is
Mm-hmm.
something to blunder. Nothing there was nothing to blunder, but
Well, he did find a way to blunder a bishop
yeah.
back. I mean, granted, the bishop was way winning, but
And to be fair to John too, Tom he could be thinking on Thomas's time for some of this. You know, yeah, John clearly strong player. Once we can see him start to get some points against Connor, then he's really going to be cleaning up the club. We'll be like, oh man, got to play John. You kidding me? He's just going to beat me with easily any time. I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to go home early and not even get to hang out after because because what
Well,
I'm just gonna sit here like, man, these guys are gonna be playing for the next 3 hours.
well, let's go back. We didn't really. So I think we've gone through all the games so far.
Yeah, we went through all the games, and we are kind of
It's,
pretty far past when we usually would do our end time. Maybe
okay.
I'm all good to going as long as you want to go, but we did get through all the games, and
Okay. The only one I wanted to the only one I
we
wanted
got
to wrap up was I didn't finish
yeah.
Dane's game.
And board
So
one
let's
also
just.
was looks like wow UVB Connor, so
He did.
we
Okay,
should
so we should.
definitely so
Yeah.
Connor's master hope is getting a bit dashed. He's back to the grind.
Ooh, this guy is playing some antisocial chess here.
Yeah, dude, you should.
So you gotta-
Robert is playing his own brand of chess for sure. He's he's got the most fans at the club though. We got a ton of fans for players who are not even in Minnesota who are just like, what's going on in Robert's game this week? What's Robert
Oh,
doing?
really?
Yeah, because they've and New Bear who's the usual commentator in your
Yes.
spot. He said he's never seen a player like Robert in his whole life. I told my
So Robert.
I met New
Yeah.
Bear through my main coach Sayantan Das, and I told Sayantan next time he sees New Bear to ask him what he thinks of Robert. Because I know New Bear will get a kick out of that.
Yes.
So Robert, I guess we get to talk about why his chess is anti-positional each week, but he has a lot of fun, and
Mhm.
we know he's got the skills too. He's 2187 peak, so he's down. But it does show what you play like this. Robert's down to 1950, and he's 2100 plus skill for sure.
Yes.
So it does not it comes at a price, and the price is your rating. If you want to just have fun and sack pieces without calculating it and hope for the best.
This is yeah. No, his approach is definitely entertaining, and
He used to play
now
F
he
four
left
C.
the
He used to
position.
play F4 C4 or F5 C5 every game, and now he's been changing it up. He's been playing more positional openings, but
Mm.
then he still mixes it up in the middle game.
Oh, yeah. I think I remember the last game I played against him um was in was in Sioux Falls, and um we started off normally enough with D4 and F5. And I mean, I is one of the lines I play against the Dutch is knight C3. And so I was almost wondering at what point, what is he going to play that is off the beaten path? And so I'm thinking about this in my head as we're playing. And he produces it fairly quickly. So it's a D4, F5, knight C3, D5, bishop f4, and he plays an early c5. So he gets his f5, c5 thing in. And in that specific position, it wasn't great because I think black has to be a bit more restrained with like c6 in those sort of structures. But it created a very interesting game. And it also added to the fluidity of the game that was played at a faster time control than what is being played here. But then it wouldn't matter to him because he plays fast all the time, right?
Yeah,
Robert.
Robert loves to play fast. Yep.
Yes.
I'm 0-1
Well,
against
nothing.
I'm 0-1 against Robert. He played a kind of Grand Prix type attack against my Sicilian, and I did the wrong strategy there. I'm like, oh, you're gonna go all in with no king safety. I played like bishop takes g5, went for a kind of counterattack against him. I should have let him stack some pieces instead of trying to do it myself because my
Mhm.
my sacrifice was unsound. So that's a bit ironic, you know. I I did an unsound peace sack against Robert, so I
Yes.
guess that is like some karmic justice, or uh, I don't know what, but
So, there
and I'm
was
a safe,
this,
and I'm like the safest, and I'm like the safest player in the club, so.
and you're sacking unsoundly
But I'm
against
like, but I was
Robert.
so nervous. I'm so nervous to get, and I'm like, I can't allow him to do this pawn storm without castling his king anywhere. So I gotta punish this somehow, even though I can't actually calculate all this. And that's unfortunately that strategy doesn't work out in classical chess. But
No, not that's well, you have to be willing to roll with it. And if it's not your normal vibe, then it's not going to work well. So this was interesting. So when we left the game, I think we left the game when it was that move. We left the game around here. And we're wondering what Black's plan was going to be. And so UV found this nice maneuver, which I was wondering when he was going to play f5 and if he'd be willing to play f5. Because it's always a question of play f5, you're making your bishop on g7 less happy, but it also constricts white to some extent. And if you make sure to follow up with f5, then now you're opening the position and creating more problems for white. And white plays this f4. Oops. And at this point, UV's playing well, positionally, strategically, but also managing his clock well, because there's on 2 minutes and 39 seconds left to go.
yeah, so found a lot of these moves on very low times. So that's pretty impressive. But
Yeah.
well, how did he trade? What happened to bishop g3? Because that was looking pretty bad. So he just traded it off. Okay.
So he decided to trade off the dark squared bishop.
Both sides didn't like their dark square
Um,
bishops, so they're like,
yes.
but it seems like black's is better than white's. I mean, I guess he wants to
Uh,
use the d8 square.
well, I think he also wants to. So Black's bishop, um, right at the moment doesn't have any uh, good targets. Black's bishop is defending g3, which happens to be on the half-open g file. So there might be an argument for um, exchanging off, and there might be, for the same reason, an argument for white not to agree and to go back to f2, just from that standpoint, and then maybe in some world uh, start putting pressure on d6 by
I,
doubling rooks
I
on,
feel like
on the d file.
I feel like white's super happy to trade the bishops, but I feel black's maybe yeah why, but I can also see what you're saying there too.
Yeah, because now, um, so part of White's problem is he always has to consider that Black could play e3 at some point, including the bishop um, in the attack on g2.
Yeah, that bishop's way better than knight. Okay,
Yeah,
now especially after CB5, now you can't even play knight d5 anymore. So
yeah.
what's up with CB5? I don't really
I
like
thought
that.
the idea of c4 was to get the knight to d5 and block that bishop out.
Yep.
I was kind of surprised that he played cb5.
Yeah, because I'll even give a pawn for that bishop if at a certain point here.
Yeah, yeah. And in this case,
Yeah,
if
I'm
you
just
play
gonna
knight
give
d5,
two.
I think you're getting it there for free. If you play 95 here, sorry, before rook there, and you play 95 right now, I think you're getting the knight there for free, right? Because he has, otherwise he loses exchange. So then here and what's the best way to play here? Maybe.
I feel like rook takes makes some sense. Yeah, you still got queen takes c4.
Yep.
Um, Otherwise, you double your rooks to stare out your own pawn. That's not feeling good. I mean, we
Yep.
know we know rook in games. Got to keep those rooks active if that ever
Exactly.
gets started. I mean,
Yeah.
I want to play like it's a rook in game, even though I know there's still queens on, and play for activity. And so you're going to attack my pawns, I'll attack your pawns. I mean, clearly you got to calculate all this stuff, but that's just my intuition.
Yes. But just in general, it would seem like I mean, I thought the reason for playing c4 was to get the knight to d5. But um, Cotter was actually aiming to get a pawn, which he might have not anticipated the strength of e3 here, which is
Yeah,
funny because we're just talking about.
he could still play knight d5. Okay,
And this is the thing, is now there's no bishop defending f2, so you can't use g3 to keep the rooks out. Then again, it's still not a forced win until there. And even there, it's not obvious it's forced. So this game is still kind of a fight. In fact, if anything, the last couple of moves, it seems like White has better chances now.
makes
Wow.
sense. Yeah,
Okay.
Connor has been going for double edged at the end of games, so he's
Yeah,
playing.
White seems to be better at this point. Not sure about that.
I mean,
Okay.
those yeah. Look at the. I mean, those pawns look really scary. Okay, he wants maybe queen
Huh.
c8.
Oof. Okay. So, yeah, how do you keep those? You need to keep those pawns under lock and key. And that move was not achieving that aim. Although, okay, maybe there's an idea to win the rook, but nice. Very nice.
Nice. So that's force mate,
Yeah,
or at least queen. And
and mate.
and if the king ran to f3,
Wow.
just curious for a second, instead of
Yes, so what more? What moment?
I guess yeah, right here, just mate in one. Okay.
Yeah, I guess mate one. Yes.
Um,
All right. Well, I guess we've gone through all the games,
yeah,
and folks are probably tired of hearing my voice.
yeah. Thank you guys.
Um,
Thank you so much for the commentary tonight. We really appreciate it, and we're gonna
Thanks for
see
having
you
me.
okay back next week. So look forward to that again. We got some shocking results tonight, um, especially yeah, the one right in front of us. So it
Yeah.
goes to show we have a very competitive club, and we're never going to be able to predict any of the results, and that keeps it exciting. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Check out the Discord in the description. Um, Come in, solve puzzles with us on Tuesday, and otherwise, I guess we will see you guys next week. Thank you so much.
Hey guys.